Brandon stood at the edge of the patio, the weight of betrayal pressing down on him. His fiancée Megan still laughed with her friends, blissfully unaware that her mask had slipped. He had heard every word. Her plan to use him as a stepping stone, to abandon him once the wedding was paid for. But now the power had shifted. He held all the cards, the proof of her betrayal neatly stored on his phone. With a deep breath, he stepped forward, his voice steady. "Megan, why don't you tell everyone your real plans?" Her smile faltered, and in that moment Brandon knew. He wasn't just a stepping stone. He was the immovable rock that would shatter her lies. Thank you and call to action. Thank you for being here and listening to this story. If you've ever felt used or betrayed, know that you are not alone and that the truth has a way of setting you free. If this story resonates with you, drop a 1 in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to help us bring more powerful stories to light. Your voice matters. Let's keep this conversation going. Brandon had always believed in building a life from the ground up. At 34, he owned a successful landscaping business in Dallas, Texas, crafting beauty from raw earth, much like he had done with his own life. People admired his work ethic and his unwavering kindness. His friends often joked that his heart was as big as his backyard projects, and in their close-knit community, Brandon was the guy everyone could count on. His fiancée Megan was everything he thought he wanted: bright, charming, and ambitious. At 29, she worked in marketing, her polished demeanor and quick wit making her a rising star at her firm. Megan had a natural talent for making others feel seen and heard, but beneath her sweet exterior lay a quiet calculation that only a few glimpsed. She had always known how to turn situations to her advantage, a skill Brandon mistook for adaptability and strength. Megan's younger sister Sarah, at 27, had a softer presence. She was thoughtful with an intuitive nature that sometimes set her apart from Megan's fast-paced world. Though Sarah admired her sister's success, she had seen flashes of Megan's manipulative side before. She couldn't shake the feeling that Megan's perfect relationship with Brandon might not be as genuine as it seemed. The late afternoon sun cast a warm glow over Brandon's backyard as burgers sizzled on the grill. It was a casual Saturday BBQ, with friends laughing, drinks flowing, and the smell of charcoal mixing with freshly cut grass. Brandon loved these moments. Simple, honest, surrounded by the people he cherished. Megan was on the patio with her two best friends, Amy and Lauren, their heads bent close in conversation. Their laughter drifted through the open kitchen window, light and carefree. Brandon had ducked inside to grab more beer from the garage fridge when he caught a fragment of their conversation. His name spoken with a tone he didn't recognize. He paused, the cool metal of the fridge handle grounding him as he listened. "Oh, come on, Meg." Amy's voice was teasing. "You're really going through with it?" Megan sighed, an exasperated sound. "He's just a stepping stone. I'll leave him once the wedding is paid for." Time seemed to stretch, every syllable hanging in the air. Brandon's hand tightened around the fridge door, the cold biting into his palm. His mind struggled to process what he'd just heard. Surely it was a joke, some twisted misunderstanding? But then Megan continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that slipped through the open window. "I mean, he's sweet and all, but I can't build the life I want with a guy who spends his weekends covered in dirt. Once the wedding's over, I'll give it a year. My cousin said I could get decent alimony since he owns his business." Brandon's breath caught in his chest. His world, which had felt so solid only moments before, now cracked beneath him. The beer cans clinked softly in his other hand, an echo of normalcy in a moment that felt anything but. Swallowing the bile that rose in his throat, Brandon forced a steadying breath. He had always been the calm one, the reliable one. Now, that composure was all he had to hold on to. He couldn't confront her, not here, not now. Instead, he pushed a smile onto his face, the same smile he'd worn 1,000 times before, and stepped back outside. Megan looked up, her face brightening as if nothing had happened. "There you are," she called, her voice sweet and inviting. "Just getting more beer," Brandon replied, his voice steady. His hands didn't tremble as he set the cans on the table. He kept grilling, flipping burgers, nodding along to stories, all while his mind raced with a truth he could barely believe. Brandon felt a hollow ache in his chest, the kind that settles in slowly before ripping you apart from the inside. Each word he'd overheard replayed in his mind, the laughter, the casual cruelty of it all. It was as if his entire world had shifted in those few seconds, the foundation of his life crumbling beneath him. The woman he loved, the one he had planned a future with, saw him not as a partner but as a stepping stone, someone to be used and discarded. He moved through the rest of the barbecue on autopilot, smiling at jokes he didn't hear, flipping burgers with hands that no longer felt steady. His body moved, but his mind raced, a storm of questions and doubts. Was any of it real? The quiet mornings with coffee and shared smiles, the late-night talks about dreams and family, all of it now felt like scenes from a play where only he hadn't known his role. Brandon's pain wasn't just about the betrayal, it was about the humiliation, the deep wound of realizing he had been living in someone else's game. Anyone who has ever been blindsided by someone they love understands this kind of hurt. It's not just heartbreak, it's the shattering of reality itself. If you've ever found yourself in a similar situation, where the truth hits you like a freight train and you're left standing in the debris of what you thought you knew, you're not alone. Sometimes sharing your story can be a step toward healing, a reminder that there's strength in vulnerability. Feel free to share your experience in the comments. Your story might help someone else find the courage to move forward. We truly appreciate you being here, not just to listen but to be a part of this journey. Your support turns stories of heartbreak into powerful lessons of resilience, showing that even in our most broken moments, there is hope. In the days that followed, Brandon moved through life like a ghost. He went to work, met with clients, and maintained the calm demeanor everyone expected of him, but underneath, his mind churned with questions. He couldn't just confront Megan, not yet. He needed to understand how deep her deception went. One evening, while Megan was out working late, Brandon sat on the couch, his laptop balanced on his knees. He had learned to trust his instincts over the years, and right now every fiber of his being told him something was wrong. He typed her name into a search engine, his fingers moving almost on their own. Social media profiles, tagged photos, business pages, all the usual things. But then he stumbled upon a handle he didn't recognize. @Megan Reimagined. Clicking through, he found a carefully curated profile full of glamorous photos, luxurious settings, and captions that felt worlds away from the life they shared. Megan posed in designer clothes, standing in front of upscale venues with captions like, "Manifesting the life I deserve," and "Only surround yourself with what elevates you." His heart twisted as he realized she had been crafting a whole other life, a life without him. What hit hardest wasn't the photos themselves, but the comments. She responded to strangers with flirtatious banter, hinted at a future of big changes, and even joked about moving on to bigger and better things. There was no mention of Brandon, no trace of the life they had built together. Instead, she referred to herself as a soon-to-be influencer, as if her wedding to him was just another step in her brand strategy. The initial shock gave way to a cold, quiet determination. If Megan thought he was just a stepping stone, she was about to learn that he could also be the immovable rock that shattered her plans. His heartbreak sharpened into focus. Each lie she told him became a thread in the net he would use to catch her. He saved screenshots, cataloged every post, and began to map out a plan. But Brandon knew he had to play it smart. Confronting her now would only give her the chance to spin the story. No, he needed more. He needed to be patient. He needed to let her believe she had the upper hand. It wasn't enough to just end things. She had to understand what it felt like to lose everything you thought was secure. He started reaching out to the wedding vendors, inquiring about deposits and contracts. He confirmed that every agreement was in his name alone. He moved his savings to a separate account, slowly and quietly. Every night as Megan slept beside him, he crafted his plan with the precision of a surgeon, methodical, deliberate, and with a single goal in mind: the truth. Thank you for being part of this story. Your support means more than you know. It's not easy to talk about betrayal and heartbreak, but by sharing these stories, we shine a light on the strength it takes to move forward. It's a reminder that even when life feels like it's unraveling, every thread pulled can help weave a stronger future. Sarah had always admired her older sister. Megan had a way of drawing people in, making them feel important, and Sarah often found herself swept up in her sister's whirlwind of confidence. But lately, something felt off. Megan had become secretive, disappearing for long stretches with vague excuses, and her stories didn't always line up. When Sarah asked about the wedding plans, Megan would roll her eyes and change the subject, almost as if the entire event was just a tedious formality. The final straw came when Sarah overheard Megan on a phone call. She had stopped by Megan's apartment unexpectedly, letting herself in with the spare key. From the hallway, she heard Megan's voice, low and conspiratorial. "Once this wedding is done, I'll have everything I need. Brandon is so predictable, he won't know what hit him." Sarah's stomach turned. She stepped into the room and Megan's eyes went wide. "What are you talking about?" Sarah demanded, her voice trembling. Megan sighed, setting her phone down. "You wouldn't understand, Sarah. You've always been too soft. Is this wedding even real to you? Do you even love Brandon?" Megan's expression hardened. "Love? Sarah, love doesn't pay bills or get you into country clubs. This is about building a future." Sarah felt the room close in around her. "So, you're just using him?" "Don't be dramatic," Megan snapped. "It's not like he'll be worse off. He gets his dream wedding and I get what I deserve." The truth landed like a blow. Sarah couldn't believe the sister she had looked up to could be so callous. She left without another word, her mind racing. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her loyalty to her sister battled fiercely with her conscience. She had always believed in standing by family, but this was different. This wasn't about a harmless lie or a small mistake. This was betrayal, pure and calculated. After hours of wrestling with her thoughts, Sarah made a decision. She reached out to Brandon, asking him to meet her at a quiet coffee shop away from prying eyes. When they sat down, she couldn't look him in the eye. "There's something you need to know," she started, her voice barely above a whisper. She showed him the messages, repeated what she had overheard. Each word felt like a betrayal of her sister, but she knew it was the right thing to do. She watched the hope fade from Brandon's eyes, replaced by a steely resolve. He thanked her, his voice calm, but she could see the hurt beneath. Sarah felt an ache in her chest, a hollow echo of Brandon's pain. She had always thought loyalty meant standing by your family, no matter what. But now she understood that sometimes the greatest loyalty was to the truth. She had chosen integrity over blood, and while it hurt, it was the kind of pain she could live with. Have you ever had to choose between loyalty and integrity? It's a crossroads many of us face, and it's never easy. If you've been in a similar situation, sharing your experience might help someone else find the strength to make the right choice. Sometimes, hearing your story can be the light that guides another through their own darkness. Brandon knew he couldn't afford a single misstep. Megan had already shown her willingness to manipulate the truth, and if he confronted her too soon, she would spin the narrative in her favor. He needed a plan, one that would ensure the truth came out unmistakably and with undeniable proof. He started by documenting everything. He quietly gathered receipts, wedding contracts, and bank statements. Whenever Megan texted him about wedding expenses or gushed to her friends about her perfect fiancé, he saved the messages. He set up a shared drive with all the evidence, labeling each file meticulously. Brandon even went as far as recording their conversations when she started mentioning finances or future plans that didn't quite add up. He needed to create a trail of truth, a map showing exactly how deep her deception ran. Brandon reached out to their wedding vendors, starting with the venue manager. He explained that any changes to bookings or refunds needed his direct approval. The manager, sympathetic and professional, agreed to keep their conversations confidential. The florist, caterer, and even the photographer were looped into his plan. He discovered that nearly every contract was in his name alone, giving him a crucial advantage. But Brandon knew he needed more than just receipts and vendor agreements. He needed the kind of evidence that would hold up against any lies Megan might tell. Reluctantly, he hired a private investigator. Within days, the investigator uncovered a hidden bank account in Megan's name. She had been siphoning money from their joint account into her secret stash, preparing for a life after Brandon. The account logs showed purchases he never knew about, designer clothes, spa treatments, and even a deposit on a luxury apartment in a part of town far above their usual means. The discovery hit Brandon hard. It wasn't just the financial betrayal, it was the premeditation. Megan had been building her escape plan while lying next to him at night, her head on his chest as if nothing were wrong. His hands tightened around the printouts of her transactions, the paper crumpling beneath his fingers. He took a deep breath, the pain in his chest slowly hardening into resolve. There were moments when Brandon questioned himself. Was he doing this for revenge or for justice? He didn't want to be vindictive. He didn't want to hurt her just to ease his own pain. But he couldn't let her walk away unscathed, leaving him to pick up the pieces of a life she had set on fire. His struggle wasn't just about exposing her, it was about reclaiming his own story, showing the world that kindness and trust weren't weaknesses. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, subscribe for more real stories where truth triumphs over betrayal. Life isn't always fair, but sometimes the right plan, patience, and integrity can make all the difference. You won't want to miss what happens next, because when the truth comes out, it comes out with a force no lie can withstand. As the wedding day drew closer, Megan made her move. She had always been a planner, meticulous and methodical, and this was no different. While Brandon was at work one afternoon, she set up her phone on a tripod in their perfectly decorated living room. She wore a soft pastel dress and had painted her face with just the right amount of makeup, enough to look vulnerable but not too much to seem contrived. She practiced a few expressions, settling on a mixture of heartbreak and quiet strength. When she hit record, tears welled up instantly, a skill she had honed over the years. "I never thought it would come to this," she began, her voice cracking perfectly on cue. "I loved Brandon so much, but sometimes love isn't enough. I've tried everything to make it work, but he's been difficult, controlling." She took a shaky breath. "I don't want to paint him as the bad guy, but I need to protect myself. I need to be honest with you all." Megan continued, weaving a narrative where she was the victim. She hinted at emotional abuse, at feeling trapped, all without saying anything explicitly defamatory, just enough to let the audience fill in the blanks with their own imaginations. The video was meant to be released on their wedding day if things didn't go according to her plan. It was her safety net, her parachute if Brandon somehow managed to disrupt her carefully crafted escape. She would post it online, tagging friends, family, and even a few influencers she had been networking with. Megan knew that public sympathy could be powerful, and if she controlled the story first, Brandon wouldn't stand a chance. Her plan was clear. Brandon would be the villain, the small-minded man who couldn't handle her ambition. She'd get her brave woman narrative, and with it she'd leverage her new status into a platform, maybe even a book deal. She imagined interviews where she would tilt her head just so, offering wounded smiles while recounting how she had found the strength to leave. The money, the attention, the freedom, it would all be hers, and Brandon would be nothing but a stepping stone on her path to success. What Megan didn't know was that Brandon had already set his own plan into motion. He had suspected she might try to twist the narrative, which was why he had recorded every conversation, documented every interaction, and created a digital fortress of evidence. While Megan filmed her preemptive breakup, Brandon was finalizing his own strategy, one that didn't just defend him, but exposed the full extent of her deception. The suspense hung thick in the air. Two plans set to collide on the same day. Megan thought she held all the cards, but she had no idea that Brandon had reshuffled the deck. As the wedding day approached, the stage was set for a confrontation where only one version of the truth could survive, and Brandon was ready to make sure it was his. On the morning of the wedding, Brandon woke up early. He brewed coffee, took a long shower, and dressed in the suit he had picked months ago with Megan by his side. He moved through the routine with a sense of calm, as if he were simply going to work on a regular day. His phone sat on the kitchen counter, already loaded with the video he had prepared. It was scheduled to send automatically at 10 a.m. to everyone in their contact list: family, friends, colleagues, anyone who might be at the wedding or watching from afar. At the church, guests filled the pews, their faces a blend of joy and anticipation. Megan was in the bridal suite, surrounded by her bridesmaids, including Amy and Lauren. She had no idea what was coming. She thought the day would go according to her script, that by the end of it, she'd either be married or have launched her story of a brave escape from a supposedly toxic relationship. When 10 a.m. struck, the video went out. Phones buzzed and screens lit up as guests received the message. The video started innocently enough, a montage of sweet moments between Brandon and Megan, smiling selfies, videos of quiet Sunday mornings, their engagement at the botanical gardens. But then the tone shifted. Clips of Megan's secret conversations played, her voice sharp and unfiltered. "He's just a stepping stone. I'll leave him once the wedding is paid for." Her laughter echoed through the room, the same laughter she had shared with her friends at the barbecue. The video included screen recordings of her Megan reimagined Instagram profile, showing her flirtations with other men, her plans to leverage the wedding into influencer fame. Finally, the video ended with the bank statements, highlighting the money she had siphoned away and the footage of her recording the fake breakup video where she positioned herself as the victim. It was damning, complete, and impossible to misinterpret. The reaction in the church was immediate. Murmurs grew into gasps. Megan's parents sat frozen in the front row, her mother's hands trembling as she watched her daughter's betrayal play out on the screen. The bridesmaids exchanged horrified looks, and the groomsmen shifted uncomfortably, unsure where to look. Brandon wasn't there, but it felt as if his presence filled every corner of the room. Megan burst into the main hall, her veil askew, makeup already smudging from the tears beginning to well. "This isn't true," she cried, but her voice lacked conviction. She looked to Amy and Lauren for support, but they took a step back, distancing themselves. Lauren, ever practical, pulled out her phone. "You told us it was just a phase, that you were only keeping him around until you found something better." Megan's face crumpled. "You don't understand. He made me feel trapped." But the evidence was too strong. Her own words and actions looped back on her, each lie crumbling under the weight of truth. Her parents stood up, her father's expression a mixture of rage and sorrow. "Megan, what have you done?" he asked, his voice hollow. "All of this was a lie?" The guests began to leave, some shaking their heads, others whispering to one another. The perfect wedding, the dream day Megan had curated for her social media followers, was unraveling thread by thread. The photographer, still on the clock, continued to capture the chaos, his lens now focused on raw, unfiltered truth instead of posed smiles and staged romance. Megan's mother turned on her, the sting of betrayal evident in every word. "We trusted you. We put down payments, invited our friends. You've humiliated us." Her father walked out, her mother following close behind. The last bridesmaid slipped out a side door. Megan was left standing in the center aisle, a bride without a wedding, surrounded by empty pews and shattered expectations. She sank to the floor, her dress pooling around her, a stark white against the dark wood of the old church. Outside, the sky had darkened, clouds rolling in as if to mirror the storm inside. Brandon wasn't there to see it, but he had already received the updates through messages and calls. Sarah, who had stayed behind at his house, watched the events unfold through the window as neighbors who had heard the gossip trickled over to offer quiet support. Brandon sat on the couch, his face expressionless, his hands wrapped around a mug of now-cold coffee. For those watching, it was a spectacle. For Brandon, it was closure. His betrayal had been laid bare, not through anger or vengeance, but through truth. He didn't need to shout or fight. He had let Megan's own actions speak for themselves. It wasn't about public humiliation. It was about showing that the life she had planned to walk away from wasn't just a stepping stone. It was real, it was solid, and it would remain standing long after she was gone. Have you ever seen betrayal exposed so publicly? It's a rare thing, but when the truth comes out, it often does so with a force that can't be stopped. If you've witnessed something similar or have your own story of truth triumphing over deception, share it in the comments. Your voice might just be what someone else needs to find their own strength. 2 days after the wedding implosion, Brandon's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. He hesitated, expecting more fallout from the video, but curiosity got the better of him. "Hello?" A woman's voice, calm but edged with something sharp, came through. "Is this Brandon?" "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Rachel. I think we need to talk about Megan and my husband, Mike." Brandon sat up straighter, a rush of adrenaline replacing his morning fog. Rachel's tone was steady, but he could hear the practiced restraint. She explained that she had seen the wedding video. Her sister had forwarded it after recognizing Megan from Rachel's own strained marriage. Rachel had suspected for months that Mike was hiding something, but until now she hadn't had proof. "He told me he was working late, that he was at meetings," Rachel said. "But the timing, the messages, it all lines up." Brandon listened as Rachel unfolded her own story of betrayal. She had found receipts for expensive dinners, seen changes in Mike's behavior, but every time she questioned him, he made her feel paranoid, dismissing her concerns as insecurity. Now, with the truth out in the open, Rachel wasn't looking for sympathy. She wanted justice. Together, they began piecing together the puzzle. Brandon shared the evidence he had collected about Megan's hidden bank account and her plans to leave him after the wedding. Rachel in turn provided financial statements and messages from Mike's phone that suggested he had been funneling money into a secret account of his own. They uncovered a trail of deceit that stretched back nearly a year, involving not just financial manipulation but plans to leave Rachel as soon as he and Megan were ready to upgrade their lives together. It didn't take long for Rachel to file for divorce, armed with a mountain of evidence. She exposed Mike's actions to his colleagues, ensuring he couldn't twist the narrative at work. His reputation crumbled, and the partners at his firm moved quickly to sever ties with him. Megan, still reeling from her wedding disaster, found herself cut off from her only remaining lifeline. What started as a single betrayal had grown into a broader reckoning. Rachel and Brandon's unlikely alliance became a powerful force, each of them stronger for standing together. In their collaboration, they found not just retribution, but also a sense of closure. They had both been victims, but now, through solidarity, they were something more: survivors, architects of their own new beginnings. Justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about reclaiming your story, about showing that truth and integrity can still prevail in a world often overshadowed by lies. Brandon and Rachel's partnership was a testament to this, a reminder that even when everything falls apart, the pieces can be rebuilt into something stronger, together. After the wedding debacle, Megan's once bright future dimmed quickly. Her dreams of becoming an influencer crumbled as the video Brandon sent out went viral, not in the way she had hoped. Her Megan Reimagined account, meant to showcase her polished lifestyle and strategic escape, became a focal point of ridicule. Followers dropped by the hundreds as her posts were flooded with comments from people who had seen the truth. Brands that had been interested in collaborations pulled their offers, unwilling to be associated with her scandal. She tried to pivot, rebranding herself as a misunderstood woman caught in a bad relationship. Megan posted tearful videos and carefully crafted apologies, insisting that the video was taken out of context. She shared stories of feeling trapped, painting Brandon as emotionally distant and overbearing. She even attempted to publish her pre-recorded breakup video, hoping to salvage sympathy. But the evidence was too strong, and the internet is rarely kind to those caught in their own lies. Every news story she told unraveled quickly. Screenshots surfaced of private messages where she boasted about her plans to use Brandon for money and status. Old friends and acquaintances began sharing their own stories of her manipulation, adding weight to Brandon's narrative. Her attempts to gain control of the story only dug her deeper into isolation. Amy and Lauren, her supposed best friends, publicly distanced themselves, claiming they had no idea of her plan. Even Megan's family remained quiet, their silence a heavy verdict on her actions. Megan's social media presence withered. Her carefully curated posts became desperate cries for validation, each one met with harsh truths and reminders of her betrayal. She found herself blocked by the very influencers she once idolized, shunned by the community she had hoped to enter. Invitations to events dried up, and the friends who had orbited her, drawn to her ambition, disappeared. She moved back in with her parents, her world reduced to a small room in the house she had once called a stepping stone on her way to better things. For everyone still watching, thank you. Sharing stories like these isn't just about betrayal or downfall, it's about resilience, redemption, and the strength found in truth. Your support is what keeps us bringing powerful stories to light, showing that while life may throw us into darkness, together we can find a way back into the light. In the weeks following the wedding, Brandon focused on rebuilding not just his life but his spirit. He threw himself into his landscaping business, finding solace in the simplicity of planting, pruning, and creating order from chaos. His phone, once a source of anxiety, became a lifeline as messages of support poured in from friends, clients, and even strangers who had seen the viral video. People admired his composure, his quiet strength in the face of betrayal. They saw a man who had turned his heartbreak into a masterstroke of truth and integrity. With his newfound clarity, Brandon started a local support group for others who had experienced betrayal. They met every Thursday evening at a community center, a small circle of chairs where stories were shared and burdens lightened. He called it Stronger Together, and the group quickly grew. People opened up about their own experiences, spouses who had lied, friends who had turned, family members who had taken advantage of their kindness. Brandon led by example, sharing his story not as a cautionary tale, but as a testament to the power of truth and resilience. As the group grew, so did Brandon's presence in the community. His business boomed as people sought out not just his landscaping skills, but the integrity he represented. He was invited to speak at local events where he shared his journey from betrayal to strength. Parents introduced him to their kids as a role model, a living example of how to handle adversity with grace. His once small world expanded, filled with new connections and opportunities, each one rooted in the authenticity he had always lived by. Emotionally, the path wasn't always easy. There were still nights when the weight of it all would settle over him, when the echoes of Megan's words would creep into the quiet of his home. But now, those moments were fleeting. They no longer held him captive. Each time he stood up to share his story or helped someone else find their footing, he felt another chain break. He began to see his past not as a wound, but as a source of wisdom, a story that could help others find their own way through the dark. Brandon also took time for himself, something he had neglected for too long. He booked a solo trip to the mountains, where he hiked through trails, breathing in the crisp air, letting nature do what it always had: heal. He found joy in the small things again, in the rhythm of his days, in the laughter of new friends. His life had changed shape, and while it wasn't the shape he had once imagined, it was strong and steady, built on the bedrock of truth. For anyone going through a tough time, remember, it's not about the setback, but how you rise. Life will test you, push you, and sometimes break you, but every challenge is an opportunity to rebuild. When the dust settles, when the wounds start to heal, what matters most is who you choose to become. You can let betrayal make you bitter, or you can let it make you better. The choice is yours, and it's a powerful one. Thank you for being here, for listening, for sharing. Your support transforms stories of pain into lessons of hope. You're not alone, and you're stronger than you know. And if Brandon's story has shown anything, it's that the strongest stones aren't the ones that avoid the storm. They are the ones that emerge from it, polished and unbreakable. After the dust settled, Sarah knew she couldn't stay. Her hometown, once a place of comfort, now felt tangled in the remnants of betrayal and broken trust. She packed her things into a modest hatchback, leaving behind the quiet streets where every corner held a memory, both sweet and sharp. She needed space to redefine herself. Not as Megan's sister, not as the girl who exposed the truth, but simply as Sarah. She moved to Austin, a city that pulsed with new beginnings. She found a small apartment in a neighborhood filled with old trees and young dreams. The first few weeks were quiet, marked by long walks and coffee shops where she sat by windows, watching life move around her. It was strange to live without the weight of her family's expectations, but it was also liberating. She took a job at a local nonprofit, helping organize community events and working with people who needed a fresh start, just like her. Sarah's decision to choose integrity over blind loyalty hadn't been easy. Her parents had struggled to understand why she sided with Brandon, why she hadn't just kept the peace. They had whispered about forgiveness, about family bonds that should never break. But Sarah knew the difference between forgiveness and enabling. She realized that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from those who refuse to change. Her strength came not from rebellion but from a quiet resolve to live honestly, even when it meant standing alone. Over time, her story became an inspiration. She started a blog, writing about her experiences and the difficult choices she had made. Her words resonated with people who had also found themselves at a crossroads, torn between what was right and what was expected. Emails trickled in, then poured strangers, sharing their own stories of finding strength in truth. Sarah found purpose in these connections, a community built on shared experiences and hard-earned wisdom. If this story inspired you, consider sharing it with someone who needs a reminder of their worth. Sometimes all it takes is a single story to help someone find their own voice. And if you haven't already, join our community by subscribing, because your story matters. Whether you're starting over or standing strong, you are not alone, and your strength can light the way for someone else. What would you do if you found out your partner saw you as just a stepping stone? It's a question that cuts deep, touching the raw edges of trust and self-worth. Sometimes the hardest truths come from those closest to us, leaving us questioning everything we believe to be real. But your story, your voice could make a difference. Sharing your experience might give someone else the strength to walk away, to rebuild, to realize they deserve more than being a chapter in someone else's story. If you feel comfortable, share your thoughts in the comments. Your story matters. Sometimes losing someone who didn't value you is the best way to find yourself. When life breaks you, choose to become the phoenix, not the ashes. It's not about the betrayal itself, but how you rise from it, how you transform pain into power and loss into a new beginning. Remember, strength isn't about never falling, it's about how you stand back up. Stay strong, stay wise, and know you are not alone. We're right here with you every step of the way, turning heartbreak into hope and building a community where every story is a step toward healing.